Hey, there's no title card or end card on this. I'm just going to use my background as my shameless self-promotion because I'm kind of doing this video as sort of a nice gesture for Ruan over at Lyuesword.com because he was really good to me and I'm really impressed with their products. So, give you a little background. About 7 months ago, I ran afoul of a. I was trying to break up a fight between a couple of rescue cats at work. Yay me! But I got snagged pretty good, and then wound up with this. Hand swelled up, and I got a septic wrist, and thankfully I got in and got treated before it spread further. But damage done. In the mix, I managed to lose one of my thumb tendons. Wanting to get back into Japanese swordsmanship as part of my physical therapy exercise. Those of you that know, a lot of the power in Japanese swordsmanship doesn't rely on the thumb. It relies on the bottom fingers and the left hand. So I figured that's great, but still certain lateral movements with the blade put a lot of stress on this poor injury of mine. So I wanted something a little bit different. So I went searching on Amazon. And I found something from Lyuesword that fit the bill, or at least I thought it fit the bill, and I was intrigued enough by the uniqueness of their products and the price that I went and checked out their website. And Lyuesword.com, wow. Usually Amazon is the cheap place to get stuff, but the price from the manufacturer is so much lower. There's just no way to turn it down at that point, and their selection is huge. They not only have a lot of katanas and some very unique styles and fixtures. They've also got a custom feature where you could just design your own, which is a really nice thing. But they've also got Chinese swords, Zhen and Dao, in different eras, Han and Tang and Qing. So if you're into that sort of thing, you could get those blades as well, and they're all beautiful and well made and surprisingly affordable. So what I ordered was an Unokubi Zukiri. Which I thought would be an ideal thing for my wounded hand. And what I got was this thing, which is compared to other Chinese reproduction swords, modern-made swords, the quality just blows them all away. I have some Paul Chen, some Hanwei, some Musashi, other manufacturers like that. This outstrips them for, in many cases, a fraction of the price. So I figured I'd get the word out. You don't hear much about Lyuesword, and supposedly they've been doing this for about 10 years. But I think part of that is it's not a name that rolls well off the Western tongue. I guess the closest English word would be leeway, but even that's not quite it. So pronouncing it, I'm probably even butchering it, even though I actually did study Chinese in college. I'm terrible at it. I've forgotten most of it. But as for the sword itself, you have a 10.5-inch handle, which is a little shorter than the common one that you'd get from other manufacturers by about an inch or so. But I like a shorter handle. I'm not a big guy. The handle also is a lot slimmer than the ones you would get from other manufacturers, which is good because this brace eats up a little bit of my grip girth, and I didn't have big hands to begin with. So this fits me really well. It feels good in the hand. It has a little bit of a curve, a little bit of a taper. And the wrapping, another thing that drew me to it is a katatemaake battle wrap, so it does not have the diamonds in the middle, just on the two ends. Underneath it, you've got a dyed black same. It's a fine grain, but it's real. And the wrapping is a Japanese silk, and it does feel like it. It's all very tight and very even. The fixtures on it are brass that have been treated with kind of a dark copper patina, and then the highlights have been worn away to the gold. But everything is very smooth, no snag points, and then the manuki are just the bright gold brass. It is double pinned. It does have a long tang. I've pulled it apart and I've taken a look at it. So it is what would be considered a long tang sword in here, and it is very sturdy. I've done some cutting with it. Nothing's come loose. The guard is a kind of that very common Musashi double lobe, but it's done differently. It's smaller than the average one. All the edges are rounded, and it's got the sculpting on it. matches the sword very well aesthetically, and also feels really good in terms of balance and feel. Like I said, nothing rubs. The Hibaki, the blade collar, has this interesting sculpting to it that grabs the saya pretty tightly. The saya itself, it's got this ribbing on it, which is probably a bamboo or rattan that's been lacquered in. The kurigata loop is pretty solid, and it has a little gold shitadome. The Sugeo cord it's not just leftover handle wrapping. It's its own thing. It's a very stout, nice cord with a good presentation knot, and then the whole thing is finished just in this mottled finish, which is good for defeating fingerprints. And most amusingly, the wood the scabbard is made out of is some sort of dark wood, like a rosewood or a teak. I'm not sure which. So that's a nice touch as well. The blade itself, which is specifically why I went hunting for this, the Unokubi Zukiri, or the Cormorant's neck, is not common in a katana. So these guys are one of the few people that make them, and they make them well. It's usually seen on a naginata or a tanto. So for the first not quite half of the blade, what you have is a pretty standard Shinogi Zukiri katana that has two fullers, not just one, which is nice, one big one, one small one, and the standard peaked spine, mune. That, is pretty common. But then, lo and behold, just before you hit the halfway point, you have this bevel. And the bevel it's almost like a back edge, but it's not sharp. So I can run my finger along it and sheath it, and I don't really have a problem with that. But what it does is it takes a massive amount of weight off the front end of the blade without really weakening it that much. Also, then it widens out just before you get to the tip. So you have a full width tip up here. Also, as for the tip, it is an unusually long and needle sharp affair. So they did a really good job with this kasaki, and it's just, you usually don't see these long kasaki on swords, especially not at this price point. As for the rest of the blade, you can't probably see in this light, but there is a visible grain line throughout the blade that is very attractive, and a visible uneven cloud hamon. So it's really well done throughout. There are no flaws, and like I said, the edge is razor sharp, and it cuts really, really well. The only cons I have to it are minor. The way that Hibaki grabs the saya, I had to do a lot of adjusting. It was sticking for a while, and I've since fixed that, and that was nice. And I also was a little sloppy in the late night practice, and I clipped my tip and bent about 1 millimeter over, but it straightened out fairly nicely with a pair of pliers and some careful application of stone, so it's really not that noticeable. But otherwise, flawless. And the weight is surprisingly light. It's not just so much that it's balanced a little bit more towards the hand. They don't advertise the weight on the website, but I'm guessing it's 2 pounds and a couple of ounces, so it's about half a pound lighter than your average katana, which for me makes it really quick and really easy on the injury. The other reason I want to praise Lyuesword is that I ordered this thing in February, and anybody who's lived so far through 2020 knows what happened after that. My sword, as far as we know, got as far as Hangzhou, and then got lost in the warehouse for 5 months. And Ruan, I was in contact with him, and he was in contact with me, and he went out of his way to try to find it and get it to me, and kept on top of it. And eventually, he just he sent me another one on his own dime, and expressed it to me, more expensive shipping, and I got it in like 10 days, and that was really impressive. And then hilariously, the original one showed up like a week after that in a box that looked like somebody had run it over. It was bowed in the middle and crushed, and I was absolutely terrified. But the blade was fine. It actually looked a little bent until I actually took it out of the styrofoam, and it was fine. The only difference is between the replacement and the original, assuming I'm dating them correctly, is that the replacement blade has a fairly traditional, let's see if I can get this, whitewood scabbard. It doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. And also the kasaki, just talking about how long these kasaki are, this one's 1/2 inch longer. It's actually a really long Okasaki, just as sharp, just as high quality, just as flawless, just as well balanced. And I don't take the inconsistency as any kind of an error. I take it as a sign that these are indeed handmade. And I since ordered another one, which I will talk about in a short period of time. But Ruan was good enough to let me keep that second one for a fraction of the price. So I have one to save and cherish, and one to beat around and see what it can do. And so far, it's held up to some of the cutting I've done and the practice I've done. I've had zero problem with it, and I consider it probably the best handling sword that I own out of a fairly extensive collection. So thank you to Lyuesword, thank you to Ruan. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and maybe I'll do some performance cutting kata EI in a future one. But until then, I'll see you next time.